Hello everybody! Today I would like to do a quick recap of the Sample Sunday series. It was running for almost 2 years, it had 56 episodes, 2 seasons, there's quite a bit to talk about. There were a lot of things going on behind the scenes, like how it started, how it went, how it ended. And yeah, that's basically what I want to talk to you about today. And also, if you stare at the screen, thinking to yourself, "Shut up nerd, just play me some music," then there's a timestamp in the description that will take you to the reveal of a new piece of gear that I will be using on this channel a little bit more, and to the jam that I made with it. So if that's what you're looking for, feel free, skip ahead. So let's talk a little bit about where it all started. I always enjoyed the idea of hardware gear. I never had any, but I watched enough YouTube to really get the appeal of it. It offered a completely different workflow than a DAW does, and it was very interesting to me. I was very curious how that workflow would translate with me and my ideas, my music. But the reason why I didn't jump in for quite a long time was the prices. What do I mean by that? Is that I live in a country which has a very weak currency. And because of that, the affordable synths and gear is not very affordable to me. And for example, the Volca Sample 2 currently costs roughly around the same that my Rant does. So to me, buying hardware was a monetary commitment, and it always gave me this anxiety, because I had to be sure that I want this particular piece of gear, that this is the best that I can get for my money, and that I will enjoy it, that I will use it, that it will provide me with enough features for me to keep me interested. Because of that, I held off from buying any gear for a very long time. So, with that being said, the year is 2020. I'm scrolling YouTube and I'm watching some hardware jams, and I stumble upon the Volca FM. And I did the same thing as I do with every new piece of gear that I find interesting. I googled the price. And after seeing the price, I've noticed that it's pretty affordable, and with enough saving I can afford it, so it was constantly in the back of my head that at some point I will get a Volca FM. And the more content I watched with the Volca FM, the more YouTube was recommending it to me. It also was recommending to me the Volca bass and the Volca keys, which I also found very interesting, but FM seemed a little bit more versatile, because it could do the ambient stuff, it could be the fuel for a techno track, so it was still the most interesting Volca to me. But at some point YouTube recommended me a video of the Volca Sample, and that was a complete game changer for me, because I watched countless videos and reviews and I learned about it so much that I was sure that if I have this piece of gear, I will be able to make pretty full sounding tracks with it, and if not full sounding tracks, I would get very close. So I started watching jams with it and researched all the features and tried to find what people did with it, and I was hooked. I was completely obsessed with it. I immediately knew, the more I watched, that I will be able to make some pretty cool stuff with it. And before I even had the Volca Sample, I already knew that I wanted to make a series that I'm going to post on a regular basis. It's going to be called Sample Sundays, and I'm going to have this top-down camera looking down on the Volca, and I'm going to put subtitles on the screen, whatever. If it's about the process, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, I just wanted to do something like that. The idea was of course borrowed from Redmin's recording and his OP1 series. He did basically the same thing, top-down camera on his OP1 and subtitles on screen. But this format is so unique because, like, everybody can do it and not a single episode will be the same. Like, every person has something different to say, every person has different things to express in the music, so it's pretty universal. And being inspired by that, I was planning and plotting how I will structure Sample Sundays. So, I get my first Volca sample, and I watched so many videos that immediately I knew how to work with it. Straight out of the box, first 15-20 minutes, I was already recording the first episode of Sample Sundays. So if you paid any attention, you would notice that the first episode of Sample Sundays came in like April of 2021, I think. And since I had the Volca sample since 2020, there's a little bit of a gap. And this gap is caused by my struggle with editing. At the time, I worked on a very outdated laptop. It struggled with most of the basic tasks. It had serious issues, and I couldn't switch it for anything else at the time. And my editing process was very tedious. And I tried various software. I didn't want to pirate anything, so I tried to stick to the free ones, but they were either very clunky and jank, or they were good, but they were not very suitable for my outdated, struggling laptop. One day I stumbled upon the Sony Movie Studio Platinum 13, and I look at it and I immediately realized, like, hey, it looks like Sony Vegas. And when I was a teenager, I had some experience with Sony Vegas, so I thought to myself, perfect. It may be even not that bad on my CPU after reading the specs. And I purchased it. And oh boy, was I wrong in so many areas. It's nothing like Sony Vegas, besides looking kinda like it. It was also not very good for my CPU, but it was the only software that kinda worked on my current laptop. I've experienced so much frustration while I was editing. The basic functions were made so obnoxiously hidden away or basically unintuitive. It was so difficult for me to work with the software. The shortcuts that I remembered for Sony Vegas, non-existent. I tried to switch how certain keyboard shortcuts work, no avail. I had this weird bug with the text tool, with the tool that I was supposed to be using for subtitles. Nope, it was so tedious and so annoying and so buggy that I had to basically use a graphic editor program to make the subtitles on a transparent background and import the PNG file into the movie studio. It was pain. It was pain. And while I was editing, I couldn't see what am I even doing, because my laptop was too weak to have the preview run in anything acceptable. So I just basically settled on the basic import the video, import the audio, sync them together, drop the PNG subtitles into the program and hope that everything works. And it didn't work all the time. And speaking of time, rendering times anywhere from 2 to 6 hours for every episode, and I couldn't use my laptop when it was rendering, so yeah. Alright, I better stop it here because I feel getting agitated as I talk about it. It wasn't a very fun time, but I pushed through it. I'm glad I did. And yeah, let's just be done with this topic of editing on my old laptop. So before I uploaded the first episode of Sample Sundays, I took part in Jamuary. At this time I didn't have any audience, to be honest. The only comments that I got on my channel were from people that found me on Reddit by accident, or from my friends trying to game the algorithm so it notices me. I uploaded my jam on the Volca sample, I went to sleep and didn't think much of it, but the next day I woke up to a big surprise. The next day I wake up, I power on my shitty laptop, I go into YouTube and I see some notifications. And I'm pretty surprised because I didn't expect anything, to be honest. And it turns out that the absolute legend Vulcanized shared my video with his audience. So he and some of his audience members came to my channel, left me a few nice comments, and I started gaining some attention from people, and that felt great, because for all these years that I'm making music, I never had random people just show up and appreciate what I'm doing, so it was very refreshing and it was very motivating to me. So the January ends and I move on to the February album writing month, and at this point I was a little bit anxious because I wasn't sure if people would be as interested in the tracks that I've made in my DAW as they were in the tracks that I made on the Volca sample in the form of a video. Luckily, people enjoyed it and they stayed on my channel. So, February album writing month ends, I recorded the 100 subscribers special, I upload it, it grants me some more attention from people, and soon after I upload my first episode of Sample Sundays. And just for the sake of clarity, let me mention that I struggle with depression, anxiety and neurosis, so putting myself out there like this with subtitles relating to me was very anxiety inducing, because in real life at that point I was very quiet and I was very introverted. I was meeting only with 2 people, and some of my friends tried calling me and offering me to go, let's say, to a bar or bowling or just hang out somewhere, and I was constantly making excuses not to, because I was kinda afraid of human contact and putting myself out there. So doing that in the form of video and putting subtitles that are about me and my thoughts and all that was scary, you know? And yeah, so you get the point. I was very introverted, I was closed off, I was anxious, I didn't like interacting and putting myself out there. So a step like uploading Sample Sundays was huge for me. I was very anxious, I was very scared of how it would be perceived. And roughly at the same time, I started working with my therapist towards getting a little bit more confident and breaking out of this weird pattern that I had of avoidance, and you know, just basically I wanted to get up on my 2 feet and be able to interact with people, not be scared of any interaction, and maybe be myself a little bit more, because I censored myself so hard that I barely even spoke in real life. And yeah, it was a very difficult time for me, but as I was working with my therapist towards opening up a little bit more, Sample Sundays became a great exercise in that, because the first episode did great, so did the second and the third, and I noticed that, hey, I'm interacting with people, I'm saying something, they comment on it in the comment section, I reply back, sometimes we go in a little back and forth, maybe about the functions on the Volca sample or just a general idea. And I've noticed that it's not all that scary, it's not all that bad, you know? Some time passes, I get more confident in the real life as well as in Sample Sundays, and it went like that for a while, but when I started getting more and more subscribers, I started getting a little bit more anxious, because not everybody was familiar with me and how I operate. If you watched a few of the first episodes, you pretty much would get the idea, like, yeah, this guy is struggling but he's doing his best. And if you're new to the channel and you just watch a random video, then you might be like, what the fuck is this guy on about? I don't know if it was a valid fear or not, but at the time it felt very real and it started affecting how I approach it. So when the year 2022 came and I took part in Jamuary, I was still editing the episodes for Sample Sundays that I recorded previously, and I realized that I'm censoring my thoughts more and more and more and more until they became this weird shell of what the idea initially was. So during Jamuary, my Volca sample malfunctions. And I'm heartbroken because I grew so close with this device. I made so much music, I had so many ideas, and it was a crucial part to my channel too. And Sample Sundays was this thing that I still loved at this point, and it was very important for me to keep going, to keep chipping away at it, to keep trying to make this thing work. And I still had some leftover episodes, let's call them that, to edit, but I wasn't sure what's next. So with some help from my wonderful friends, I was able to get a new one, and that was very relieving. When it came, I immediately started working towards the second season of Sample Sundays, and in my head it was a huge challenge because I constantly was thinking that I'm gaining subscribers, I'm gaining more and more attention, and that people come in, they don't necessarily have the context to who I am, like I mentioned before, and that this new season should be better, should be bigger than the first one. And I got so overwhelmed by this idea that I basically spent an entire season going through crisis. I was making banger tunes, I liked a lot of them, but just the subtitles and the editing and all of the stuff became very overwhelming. Especially that behind the scenes I was going through some serious issues, and it was very difficult to function day to day, and it's something that it still has an effect on me, but at that time it was just draining, you know, and I felt like it's dripping slowly into the subtitles, into how I approach this series, and I realized myself slacking a little bit on the transitions or maybe on the edits or this or that, and that also didn't help me to feel any better about it. And I felt like I can't really express what I'm going through without scaring some of my audience away because of the depressing undertones. Because, you know, you don't come to this channel to get depressed, you come here to listen to music, you know, so I didn't really want to mention anything of that nature. Even though I didn't tell you that I'm struggling, I get the sense that some of you may just sense it by the way that I approached it, and it was a scary thought to me because I just wanted to make music and share it with the world, you know, and right now I have all those problems in my personal life and they start to drip into the thing that was the passion project that I've put so much heart into, and I felt like I can't really put my heart into this project anymore in terms of the visual side, because I still put a lot of heart in the music, but I felt very limited and I felt very confused in what should I do, what I shouldn't do, and it was draining. So I know it was probably a bit too personal or whatever, but I wanted to explain myself a little bit because it was something that affected me, it affected the series, and that's also a huge reason why I'm ending this series, because I don't feel like I can do one thing or another at any point, so I just want to focus on my main goal, and my main goal is to make music and share it with the world. And if this music makes you feel something, whether it's entertainment, whether it's relief, whether it helps you process some emotions, or whether it helps you distract yourself from those emotions, whether it makes you explore some of the thoughts that you had, or if it helps you to get away from them, that's what I'm making music for. So if my music affects you in any way, shape or form, I'm happy. Looking back at the series, I'm very happy with it, because first of all, I made a lot of cool music. Of course, like, not every episode was a banger, but there are many episodes that I like to come back to and listen and realize that, yeah, if it wasn't for Sample Sundays, I would never write this particular track, and I would never stumble upon this particular idea. So that's something that I'm grateful for, because it made me explore a lot of creative avenues that I wouldn't otherwise explore. And the second thing that's great about it, that I'm really fond of when I think about the Sample Sundays, is the fact that I grew as a person a lot, because Sample Sundays allowed me to open up a little bit more and show who I am on a certain level. And it made me realize that whenever I do open up and share a little bit about myself, it's not always going to be met with ridicule or hatred or whatever. When I was starting making this series, I had very low self-esteem, and I still kinda do, but the feedback that I got from you guys was very helpful for me to grow as a person. And I'm very grateful for this experience. It was a hell of a ride, despite all the negativity surrounding my personal life. And I'm also very grateful to you guys for supporting me on this wild journey and leaving me the feedback, the comments, and basically just experiencing this weird hell of a ride with me. So thank you guys.